Hello, welcome back. This is an Algebra 1 video where we're going to be focusing on how to solve absolute value equations. Okay, here is our first example. Now, the key to this is that you kind of want to get your equation to this point where you have only the absolute value and what's inside it on one side and a different number or expression on the other side. So I call it isolating the absolute value. So on one of these sides of the equation, you want only the absolute value and whatever's in between those two bars, but then the number or the expression on the other side. So for this one, we're already at that point. So then we can go ahead and solve it for the absolute value part. What we do is when we get to this point where it's isolated like this, we take what's written inside the absolute value bars and we're going to write it twice. Negative 5y here and negative 5y over here. What we're going to do is essentially we're going to solve two equations, as most of these actually end up having two solutions. So let me delete that. Then we're going to take the number or expression that's on the other side, and we're going to write two versions of that. We're going to write the positive version of that, just as it appears, and then we're going to write the negative version of that. Because as you know, with absolute values, it's distance from zero. So it can either be positive or negative. That's why a lot of times you end up with two solutions. And most of them are listed as y equals blank or blank. Okay, now we're going to solve them both separately. So the one on the left is negative 5y equals 5. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5 to get the solution. These will cancel, leaving us with y over here. And then 5 divided by negative 5 is negative 1. So there's our first solution for y. On the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to divide this by negative 5 and this by negative 5 so that these will cancel and we'll have just y over here. But negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. So that means our solution to the equation is that y is equal to either 1 or negative 1. I said that backwards, but you know what I mean. So y equals either negative 1 or 1. Okay, here's our next example. We're going to take the absolute value of k plus 2 equals 2, and we're going to solve for k. So again, we want to first check before we start solving that the absolute value is isolated. That means it's by itself on one side of the equation. And in this case, it is. So if you're at that point, you can go ahead and take what's inside the absolute value bars, which is k plus 2, and write it twice. So we're going to do k plus 2 and k plus 2. Then what we're going to do is two different versions of what's on the other side of the equation. The positive version, which goes here, and the negative version, which goes here. So that's why I have two different equations. Now I'm going to solve them both separately to get my two solutions. So on the left, I would have to subtract 2 from both sides. This will cancel, leaving me just k on this side. And then 2 minus 2 is 0. So there's our first solution. On the other side, on the right equation on the right, I'm still going to subtract 2 from both sides to cancel that and just get k over here. But it ends up a little different on the other side because negative 2 and another negative 2 is negative 4. So our solution to this equation is k equals either 0 or, whoops, negative 4. My pen slipped. That's supposed to be a 4. There we go. Okay, here's our next example. We have the absolute value of k minus 9 equals 0. So again, you want to get to that place where the absolute value is isolated, or whatever is inside those absolute value bars is by itself. And in this case, we're already there. So we're going to take what's written inside the bars, which is k minus 9, and we're going to write it twice. So k minus 9 and k minus 9. Now you might be thinking, well, how do I do two different versions of 0? And that's the thing is, you don't. So we're going to make this equal to 0, and we can actually get rid of this equation. We're not going to need it. 0 is neutral, so it doesn't have positive or negative attributes. It's just 0. So we're only going to have one solution for this one. We're going to add 9 to both sides. Cancel this. We get k over here equals, and then 0 plus 9 is 9. So this one actually only has one solution, k equals 9. Now, most of the time you will have two solutions, but not always. Okay, here's our next example. So again, with an absolute value equation, the first thing you want to check for is that that absolute value and what's in between it is isolated. In this case, it is not, because on the right side of that equation, 44 equals absolute value of q plus 2 plus 2. You have a plus 2 outside the absolute value bars. So we need to move that to the other side of the equation so that what's inside the absolute value bars is by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides here so that that cancels. What that leaves me with is 44 minus 2, which is 42, equals the absolute value of q plus 2. Okay, now we have the absolute value isolated. So what we can do is rewrite that q plus 2 that's inside and rewrite it twice. So q plus 2 over here and q plus 2 over here. Then I want to take the number that it's equal to and write one that has the positive version and one that has the negative version. So I'm going to make this equal to 42 and this one equal to negative 42. Then I'm going to solve them separately as if they're separate equations, and I'll end up with two solutions. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides here to solve this one. That cancels. So that's q equals 40. Now on the other side, I do the same thing. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. This cancels, and I end up with q over here. But this time, negative 42 and another negative 2 equal negative 44. So our solution for this equation is that q is equal to either 40 or negative 44. Okay, here is our last example for today's video. We're going to solve the equation absolute value of negative j equals 15. So first we need to check to see if the absolute value is isolated, which means is it by itself on its side of the equation? And that is true here. So we can go ahead and take what's inside the absolute value bars and write it twice. So I'm going to write negative j and negative j over here. Okay, now we're going to do a positive and negative version of the number that it's equal to. So this is going to be equal to positive 15, then we'll make this equal to negative 15. Now we just need to solve both equations separately to get our two solutions. So negative j is the same as saying negative 1 times j. So to get rid of that, I have to divide both sides by negative 1 so that these cancel, and I have just j over here equals, then 15 divided by negative 1 is negative 15. So that's my first solution. On this side, I can also put a 1 right there because negative j is like saying negative 1 times j. Then divide both sides by negative 1. So I can cancel that and have just j over here. But negative 15 divided by negative 1 is positive 15. So our two solutions here are that j equals negative 15 and positive 15. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you in another video soon.